Okay, so when you hear the phrase gun culture in America, what springs to mind?
It's complicated, right? Often a pretty polarizing image for a lot of people.
Exactly. And today, we're going to try and, well, take a deep dive into what's really behind U.S. gun culture, specifically looking at 2025.
Our goal really is to unpack its history, understand the defenders, and what it all means for American society going forward.
Yeah, and wrestle with that really tough question. Why does America hold on to guns so tightly, even when we see violence continuing, maybe even growing?
Right. This is meant to be your shortcut to getting a handle on it. We've got some surprising facts and key insights lined up.
So let's jump right in.
Okay. Well, the first thing you notice is just the sheer scale. The numbers are, well, they're striking.
How striking are we talking?
We're talking over 400 million privately owned guns in the U.S.
400 million.
Yeah, more guns than people. And just think about 2024 alone, over 50,000 gun-related incidents reported.
Wow, that really frames the sheer presence of guns.
It absolutely does.
But here's something that seems, well, counterintuitive. Even with those numbers, gun ownership is actually increasing.
That's right. We're seeing a noticeable rise, especially among women and first-time buyers.
So despite everything, more people are choosing to buy guns. How do we make sense of that?
I think it shows how deeply embedded gun ownership is for a lot of Americans. It's often less about violence for them.
And more about?
More about ideas like freedom, personal identity, protection, self-reliance.
Right.
We heard from one gun shop owner in Texas. He put it very simply, it's part of our DNA.
Part of our DNA. That's a strong statement.
It suggests it's fundamental to how many people see themselves and their ability to, well, protect what's theirs.
And this isn't just a modern feeling, is it? It has deep roots.
Oh, absolutely. It goes right back to the country's founding documents.
You mean the Second Amendment?
Exactly. The Second Amendment to the Constitution. It reads, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state.
The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And for many, that's not just history.
No, not at all. For them, it translates directly into, well, fundamental rights today, the right to defend your family, your property.
And even, in their view, the right to resist potential tyranny.
That's often a part of the interpretation, yes. It's seen as a safeguard against threats, both, personal and maybe even governmental.
So how does that constitutional idea, that amendment, actually play out in 2025? It's become more than just owning a gun, hasn't it?
Oh, much more. It's really evolved into this powerful, widespread self-defense culture.
Meaning what exactly? Like training?
Yes. You see gun safety courses everywhere, tactical training becoming popular, concealed carry permits are common now, even in cities and suburbs where maybe you wouldn't have seen that years ago.
So it shifted from just having the right to feeling a responsibility.
Precisely. For many owners, it's a responsibility that requires skills, training, and being prepared.
And all this culture, this ownership, it supports a massive industry, right? There's a huge economic side to this.
Absolutely enormous. You can't understand the situation without looking at the economics.
How big are we talking?
The U.S. gun industry generates over $30 billion a year. Annually.
30 billion. Wow.
Yeah. So it's clear this isn't just about individual choices or culture. It's a major economic sector.
And who are the main players driving that?
Well, you have the manufacturers, obviously, companies making firearms, then ammunition companies, retailers selling accessories, gear, and, of course, the big lobby groups.
Like the National Rifle Association, the NRA?
The NRA is definitely the most well-known, yes. Hugely powerful lobby.
And that power, that influence.
Yeah.
It has real-world consequences for policy, doesn't it? Especially at the federal level.
Undeniably. These groups heavily influence laws, they get involved in elections, they shape public opinion.
Which often
means that significant gun control legislation struggles to pass Congress, even after major tragic events like mass shootings.
It seems like a real disconnect sometimes.
It is. We talked to a policy analyst who basically said, follow the money.
Right.
It really underscores that guns aren't just cultural symbols, they are very much commercial products. The money and the culture are deeply intertwined.
Okay, so we have the history, the culture, the economics.
Yeah.
But there's also a psychological layer here, isn't there? Something about fear, control.
Yes, that's a huge part of it. Guns are often linked psychologically to managing fear and feeling a sense of control in an uncertain world.
What kind of fears are driving this? Is it just crime rates?
It's complex. Sometimes it's rising crime rates, yes, but it's also things like political instability, anxieties fueled by media, It's often more about the feeling of vulnerability than the objective statistics.
And those motivations, they're probably vary quite a bit depending on who you talk to and where they live in 2025.
Absolutely. For example, you might hear urban residents talk more about self-protection from crime. Rural Americans might bring up mistrust of government more often, and we're seeing more women and minority groups citing feelings of increased vulnerability as a reason to arm themselves.
And what's fascinating is that paradox. Sometimes crime rates might actually be going down statistically.
But the fear narrative keeps gun sales high anyway. It's powerful.
Yeah, that message you hear everywhere. Better to have it and not need it.
Exactly. That seems to resonate very strongly, regardless of the data sometimes.
Why do you think that gap persists
Yeah.
between the stats and the fear?
Well, narratives are powerful. Media cycles, political rhetoric, emphasizing danger, personal stories, they create a sense of perceived reality that can feel more immediate, more real than abstract statistics about safety,
And that fear then fuels demand.
which reinforces the cultural value of self-protection, and the cycle continues. The perceived need for a gun persists, sometimes independent of statistical risk.
Which naturally leads to deep divisions. This brings us right to the heart of the gun debate in America. It's incredibly polarized.
Extremely. On one side, you have people pushing hard for measures like universal background checks.
Things like red flag laws, too.
Yes, red flag laws allowing temporary gun removal from someone deemed dangerous, and bans on certain types of firearms, like assault weapons. They see these as vital for public safety.
And the other side.
The other side warns very strongly about government overreach, about violating constitutional rights. They see these measures as infringements on fundamental freedoms.
So you end up with gridlock.
Pretty much. Constant gridlock in Congress. Lobbyists, activists, voters, clashing over every single proposal. It's intense.
And this fight isn't just in Washington, right? It spills out everywhere.
Oh, definitely. Social media is a huge battleground.
Mhm.
The debate turns toxic very quickly, often fueled by misinformation that goes viral.
It feels less like a policy debate sometimes.
Right. A political science professor we spoke to called it cultural warfare. Not just a legal argument, but a clash of fundamental values and identities.
So, stepping back a bit, how does the U.S. situation look when you compare it globally? Are other developed nations dealing with this in the same way?
Not really. The contrast is quite stark, actually.
So,
Well, look at the UK. Very strict gun laws and consequently very low gun violence rates.
okay.
Or Australia. After a terrible mass shooting back in 1996, they banned most semi-automatic firearms nationwide, and they saw a significant drop in mass shootings afterwards.
In Japan.
Japan has extremely low private gun ownership, and as a result, gun deaths are almost non-existent there.
So, clear examples of different approaches leading to different outcomes.
Yes, very clear examples. Yet here in the U.S., we continue to face the recurring nightmare of mass shootings, school lockdowns becoming almost routine, domestic violence made deadlier by firearms.
And despite those international comparisons, there seems to be this persistent belief among many Americans that giving up guns wouldn't make them safer, but more vulnerable.
That belief is incredibly strong, yes. It seems to outweigh the evidence from other countries for many people.
So bringing it back to 2025, how is this constant presence of guns, this ongoing debate, actually shaping public safety measures on the ground? What are we seeing?
We're seeing a real mix of responses, some quite intense. Schools are spending fortunes on metal detectors, even AI surveillance systems.
Right.
You see churches, malls hiring more armed guards. And at the same time, some states are moving in the opposite direction, enacting permitless carry laws.
Permitless carry.
Yeah.
So allowing concealed carry without a government permit.
Exactly, which raises all sorts of questions about who is armed in public spaces and what that means for overall safety.
It's interesting, too, that even police forces aren't monolithic on this, right? There's division there as well.
That's true. You have some law enforcement leaders advocating for tighter gun laws, arguing it makes their jobs safer, makes communities safer.
But others.
Others argue for more armed civilians, believing that an armed populace acts as a deterrent and allows people to protect themselves before police can arrive.
So all these competing ideas, these different measures, what's the end result? Where does it leave the country?
It leaves us in a kind of limbo, doesn't it? A nation saturated with guns, yet paradoxically, it feels like nobody feels truly safe. It's a deeply unsettling place to be.
Yeah, it's incredibly complex. Gun violence is complex. Gun freedom is complex. There are no easy answers here.
Not at all.
And it's pretty clear this debate, this tension in America, it isn't going away anytime soon.
No, definitely not.
So maybe the final thought for you, our listener, is this really difficult question. Can a nation that was, in many ways, built on gun rights find a way to protect its citizens from gun violence?
Or has the price of that particular freedom just become too high?